YouTubers, and welcome back to Tony the Technician's channel. And today we're going to be starting my new segment, which I previously started, my coolant video that I told you guys kind of the differences in those and the importance of them. So this is a new segment I'm going to be doing, and I was talking to my buddy Sean from the Underground Vapors and trying to come up with a name for this segment, and he gave me the idea of Tony the Technical Technician of Technicality. So today on No, I'm not really going to name it that. That's a mouthful. So I think I'm going to name it like Tech Tip Tuesday, and I'm going to try and put one of these out each Tuesday. So let me know what you guys think of the name. If you guys have any other suggestions, please leave them down in the comments. But today on Tech Tips, we're going to be going into how to find an oil leak. Now there are a few different ways to find an oil leak, as well as some oil leaks are really easy to find, and some not so much, because there can be external oil leaks, which are visible to the eye, and there can be internal oil leaks, which is not so much visible to the eye until you start digging into your engine. And I'm going to kind of go over both of these, showing you on my 357 small block Chevy that I have here on my engine stand, as well as just a quick view of my 2.4 liter Ecotec in my Malibu. So you guys can kind of get an understanding of where each part is on each one of these engines. And I'll go into how to find them and all of that good stuff. So hopefully if you have an oil leak, this video helps you. And if you don't, it's just an informative video. So if you ever do come across an oil leak and you've never tried to fix an oil leak, this might help you narrow down where it's coming from. So let's get into this. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to hit that thumbs up, leave a comment down below, and subscribe if you're not a subscriber. Thank you guys. So this is my small block Chevy 357, just recently built in the last few months. Still got a couple small things I need to do to it, but I figured it would be great for this video to kind of show you a close-up of where some of these leaks could possibly come from. I already mentioned that there's internal and external leaks, so I'll go into both where those leaks could come from. But there's a couple different ways to find an oil leak. Now, a lot of shops use a UV dye with a UV light, and basically this is a dye that you can pour into your actual oil and run your car with this oil or this fluid dye running through your engine, and eventually if you have an external leak, this dye, when using the UV light, you'll be able to find the oil leak coming from your drain pan, any sorts of places, and it's very helpful. But that's used basically in shops, but you can go to your local parts store and you can find a little kit for maybe 20 bucks and use that. But if you don't want to do it that way, a good visual inspection will do a majority of the time. One thing that you need to keep in mind is if your engine's already covered in oil, it may be really hard to find that oil leak. So something I would suggest is either get brake cleaner and clean the area you suspect the oil leak is coming from, or go to your car wash, or if you have a pressure washer, and carefully pressure wash your engine. You don't want to be hitting electronics or any electrical circuits or anything. But cleaning your engine very well, getting all that dirt and grime and everything off of there will really help. After you clean it, you might have to drive it a while as well to try and get that oil to start coming out from wherever that leak is. Then it'll make it easier to spot that leak. Now that we've went over that, now we can actually move into, I'll bring you in closer and you guys can get a closer up of what I'm talking about, where each of these leaks can come from. So I really hope you guys enjoy it. Okay, YouTubers, so we're in a little bit closer here. Something you need to keep in mind is on these older engines, this is from a 74 or 75 Nova SS, and on these older engines, no matter, whether it be Ford, Chevy, Dodge, they all had a common issue with leaks from the oil pan, just because a majority of the time they used 4-piece seals. I do have a 1-piece seal on this, which kind of helps reduce oil leaks on the oil pan, but they were more common back then. Nowadays, cars have much tighter tolerances and better seals and everything like that, so it's not as big of a deal, but you're still going to come across that problem. But when looking for an oil leak you need to be careful if it's an external leak. You may see it towards the back of your engine over here, and you may think that's where the leak is coming from, and it might be on your oil pan. So you suspect that the oil pan seal or gasket is bad, when truthfully that could be completely wrong. It could be coming from up top on the top part of your engine towards the front. Now, something to be aware of is you have to think about it. Your car is moving, you know, pretty fast, and you have your radiator fans blowing on your engine as well. So, and you have pulleys moving. So when an oil leak happens, the pulleys could throw the oil around if oil is getting on the pulleys. The fans and the wind moving through your engine bay will cause the oil to go back, and most of the time down, because of gravity. So your oil leak might be coming from here, and it might just be running down your oil pan. So that's something to keep in mind. Always look up and forward. Another thing is your exhaust. If you have an internal leak in your engine, it could be possible that your oil is getting into your exhaust, and when driving, you may notice smoke from your tailpipe. If it does have a blue tint to it, it is very possible that you have an internal leak caused by worn piston rings, worn valve seals, and things like that. So that could be a bigger issue. But if you have an external leak, some spots that you want to look at are your front main seal on your oil pan, which is right up here, your oil pan seal here, and as well as, if you have the 4-piece oil pan gasket, the rear seal towards the back. Other places than that you want to look for are your oil filter, whether you have a cartridge or a canister. You want to check those to make sure that they're seated properly. The seal on the filter could be bad, or you might have cross-threaded the filter. Your drain plug, most of the time your drain plug does have a nylon gasket on it, or an O-ring, or sometimes it's built into the drain plug itself. So that's something you want to keep an eye on. Your intake manifold on top of the engine could get an oil leak as well. I will show you all of this up close here in just 1 minute. The oil pan, which I already covered, your valve covers, which is a cover that sits over your valve train. As you can see, we have a rubber gasket here, and over time, rubber does dry rot and crack, and it can easily cause a leak. Another place is up front, on the front of the engine. A lot of engines have timing chains, which means that chain needs oil. If you have a timing belt, you don't really need to worry about that, because your belt doesn't need oil supplied to it. But if you have a timing chain, the timing chain cover can also be the culprit. Another big thing that tends to leak nowadays are the actual sending units for the oil pressure or oil temperature, things like that. So I will show you where that is on this engine, and those are some of the most common places for oil to leak. Okay guys, so like I stated before, a common spot for oil leaks is the valve covers. Obviously it's different on newer vehicles, but this is the valve cover on an old vehicle or an old engine. Like I stated, this is a rubber, sometimes cork gasket under here, which they can both go bad. The cork ones tend to swell up, and sometimes they rip and go bad. And then the rubber ones over time dry rot and crack, which causes a leak. So that is one place that you need to look for an oil leak. Keep in mind, it could leak from here and run down your engine. Another place to look, I'll bring you guys in closer, just kind of go around the engine for you guys. Another place to look is anywhere on your intake manifold. Underneath here, you have a lot of oil running to your push rods and all of the necessary components in your engine, because you have oil galleries that run throughout the entire engine that lubricate everything. So you may have a leak anywhere around your intake manifold. The timing chain cover is actually pretty difficult to show you. That's it right here, but you could get a leak there. It could be caused from your front main seal right here on your oil pan gasket, the drain plug, the oil filter, which is located right here. It would be screwed on right here, and you could either have a double O-ring, cross-threaded, bad O-ring, things like that. Now, on these older engines, I mentioned the sending units go bad and tend to leak. On newer vehicles, they're located in multiple different locations, and you'll have to look at your manufacturer's information to find out where that exactly is. But on these older vehicles, the sending units could be placed in a few different locations. You have a part right here, right on top of your oil filter, where you could plug in oil pressure or oil temperature. You have a spot right here on the front of the engine that you could access oil pressure from. And also back here on the back of the engine, as you can tell, I have part of it threaded in here. I don't have everything, but those are common locations for an oil leak. Okay, so now that I've kind of went over the external leak locations on an older engine, let's move on to the internal leaks. Like I stated, you may have exhaust smoke or smoke rising from your engine bay. And that could be oil leaking on your headers, or if it's internal, a good thing to check is your spark plug. Now, when you have an internal leak, it could be caused by a few things. Some of those being worn piston rings on your pistons, allowing oil up from your crankcase into the combustion chamber. Or if you have worn valves or valve seals, which is located inside of this spring, there should be a rubber seal around it, which keeps oil from getting down into your combustion chamber through your valve, because this head does have oil galleries, which allows oil to flow through the heads. If it does get past the seals on your valves, your valve stem, then it will make its way into the combustion chamber, which causes, not only a fouled plug, but you could have running issues. So a good way to check that is to just remove your spark plug, and you just want to look at the tip where you see the ceramic part. If it's coated in either carbon, oil, or fuel, you will have a different looking spark plug. If this is covered in a black oily substance, you most likely have worn piston rings or a bad valve stem seal. So those are one way to check to see if you have those worn items. Like I stated, if that does happen, then most likely you will have a blue exhaust smoke and a poorly running engine. Okay guys, so not going to go into huge detail on my Malibu, just because it was a lot easier to show you where the possible locations are on my small block Chevy because it was on a stand. Now I will mention that if you do have an internal leak, it may be necessary to remove plastic trim pieces inside your engine bay to actually to find out where that oil leak is coming from. Also, keep in mind with vehicles like this, you have the oil cartridge, which sometimes are mounted on the side of the engine or on the top, like this one. Keep in mind that these caps for the oil cartridge, a majority of the time they're going to be plastic. So if they're over tightened, then they may crack and leak. Or if you don't seal them properly, you may also have a leak. In order to find your leak, you may have to remove parts like this, just like I stated. I'm not going to remove mine, but a good place to look if you think you have an internal leak is to remove this cover, access your coil packs, and remove them from your spark plugs. And then you might see that your coil boot is saturated in oil, and there you've just identified your major issue, especially if you're having misfires or rough idles or a poorly running engine. So those are some things to check for. And then always make sure you check between your head and your block and things like that. Also, if you get an oil leak up here, it may land on your exhaust manifold, which in that case, like I stated, you may get smoke rising from your engine bay, and that could be the culprit right there. But those are just some things to keep in mind when looking at newer engines. But with the newer engines, they do have much tighter tolerances, such as the piston ring to piston wall or cylinder wall clearances, and stuff like that. So they've gotten a lot better at fixing those oil leak issues compared to the older vehicles. So that is my quick video on how to find an oil leak and places to check. Those are your more common places, but keep in mind that some oil leaks are very tricky to figure out. Just always remember, if it is an internal leak, it's going to make it a lot easier if you either use that fluorescent dye and or UV dye and light, or a visual inspection. It will really help if you clean your engine. That's not always the case. If your oil is just completely covered in oil, it might be a hard time, so that is when you would want to clean it. But those are just some things to help you find it. Obviously, your oil sending unit, valve covers, intake manifold, oil filter, drain plug, oil pan. There's many different locations that your oil leak could be coming from. So just keep in mind that a majority of the time, the oil is going to move back and down. So always start from the front and up and trace your leak. Once you figure that out, if it's something that you believe you can fix, then fix it. If you don't think you're qualified enough to replace that part without messing anything up, I would suggest taking it to your local, mechanic or technician, whoever you like to go to for your more advanced jobs. But keep in mind that if you are having running issues and it's an internal leak, it could be a valve plug, bad coil now, but also keep in mind if it's an external leak, you could have running issues as well. If you have a leak and it's leaking onto your starter, alternator, anything like that, it could really cause an issue. If your car is having problems starting sometimes, oil may have gotten on your starter and ruined it, or onto your alternator and ruined it. But you may have a rough idle and things like that. So those are things to keep in mind. I really hope you guys enjoyed this video, and if you did, make sure to hit that thumbs up. Leave a comment down below if you guys know of any other common places that you check when looking for an oil leak, or any other common places. And as always, subscribe if you're not a subscriber. Thank you guys so much, and I hope you guys enjoy this new segment.